Hey lovely people, welcome back. Today we are going to explore what inflation and deflation are, and what is the difference between them, and what are the effects of inflation and deflation on Bitcoin's prices. So lock in, I will respond to all your queries. Before we head on to the video, be sure to subscribe to my channel, click the bell icon right next to the subscribe button, so you will be notified of all my future uploads. Also, follow our socials so you will be updated with the upcoming videos. So, let's get started. The subject of inflation versus deflation is a continuous subject of discussion among numerous renowned financial experts. You've most likely seen a great deal of talk about inflation in the news. But what exactly is expansion, and for what reason is it bad? Also, what might be said about deflation? Inflation and deflation sound like alternate extremes. So, for what reason do the two of them have negative connotations? The two terms have to do with spending power, how far your cash goes. What's more, both are viewed as marks of where an economy is heading. Do you have any idea about what inflation means? Do you comprehend what deflation means? So, how about we have an overview of inflation? What is inflation? Inflation is a quantitative proportion of how rapidly the cost of goods in an economy is expanding. Inflation is caused when labor and products are in high demand, hence making a drop in accessibility. For example, in 2000, a moviegoer had the option to purchase a film ticket for about $5. Quick forward to now, when the normal cost of a film ticket is around $10. In 2000, an individual with $10 could purchase 2 tickets. The cash has less worth than it did before because of inflation. You might have heard your parents or grandparents talk about how milk and bread used to cost so much less. That is inflation. The most well-known proportion of inflation is the rate of expansion in the Consumer Price Index, CPI. The CPI is a hypothetical crate of goods, including consumer goods and services, clinical consideration, and transportation costs. The public authority tracks the cost of labor and products in the crate to get a comprehension of the buying force of the US dollar. Hyperinflation. Inflation is frequently considered a major danger, generally by individuals who grew up during the last part of the 1970s, when inflation went out of control. An incredibly high pace of inflation throughout a short time frame is called hyperinflation. These times of quick cost increments are quickly accompanied by a breakdown in the basic genuine economy and may likewise see an unexpected increase in the cash supply. While hyperinflations can be scary, they are generally uncommon. Now, let's come on to deflation. What is deflation? Deflation happens when too many goods are accessible, or when there isn't sufficient cash circling to buy those products. Accordingly, the cost of labor and products drops. For example, say an organization sells a toy at $15. However, no one buys it. The organization answers by bringing the value down to $10. Individuals anticipate that the cost should keep on dropping, so they wait. Needing to recover at minimum a portion of their losses, the organization sets the cost at $7.50, which is a large portion of the first cost. The client's cash has double the worth it had previously. This is deflation. At first, deflation may not sound awful. Money having high worth is great. Isn't that so? Well, assuming individuals realize that costs are going down, the normal conviction is that they will not spend money by any means in hopes that the costs will go even lower. Lower costs are great for clients, but terrible for businesses. Low profits means organizations will hire fewer representatives and keep wages the same or even lower. This cycle is in some cases called a deflationary spiral. Deflation means money is worth more, yet there is likewise less of it because of the absence of expenditure, low wages, and high joblessness. Inflation of fiat money, supply, and credit. Most media sources are referring to the overall rise or fall in costs when they talk about inflation. For example, the chart above illustrates how costs have inflated over the past 100 years. Whenever costs inflate, the buying force of each dollar diminishes. In the above chart, we can see buying power devalue reliably over the past 100 years. The $10 in 1913 isn't equivalent to $10 in 2021 because what you can buy with that $10 has changed fundamentally. You aren't able to purchase as numerous labor and products with that $10 today as you could right around a century prior. Now, let us discuss the effects of inflation and deflation on Bitcoin's prices. Effects on Bitcoin's prices. Inflation and its opposite, deflation, affect the cost of Bitcoin. The overall increase in inflation will in general lift Bitcoin's costs. Furthermore, when the inflation rate turns negative, deflation tends to drive the cost of Bitcoin lower. The inflation of Bitcoin's supply and protocol. Bitcoin was made to be a currency and store of value, and its expansion rate is prearranged into its code. As you might know, Bitcoin is the fuel to keep up with and secure the Bitcoin blockchain. Around every 10 minutes, new exchanges are affirmed to the next blockchain of the Bitcoin chain. The miners who affirm those blocks get recently made Bitcoin as the reward for accomplishing the work. Therefore, At regular intervals, another Bitcoin is getting added to the economy and is accessible to spend. To restrict and cover the number of Bitcoins that will ever be made, Satoshi Nakamoto programmed a halving cycle into the code. Approximately every 4 years, the award a miner gets is sliced in half. New Bitcoin keeps on being made, but at a slowing rate. On the chart over, the slant of the curve is diminishing, signaling a comparing decline in how much new Bitcoin is being made every year. The next halving cycle is relied upon to happen around 2024, and the pace of new Bitcoin will slow much more around then. Ultimately, the award will turn out to be under 1 Satoshi, and no more Bitcoins will be made. By then, there will be 21 million Bitcoins available. However, that won't occur for a very long time, as it's expected to happen around the year 2140. What happens to BTC prices during money inflation? Now that we know that the stockpile of Bitcoin is fixed, the other essential factors that will influence its cost will be the demand for Bitcoin and the inventory of cash in the economy. The demand for Bitcoin will rise and fall based on many different factors. It can be argued that Bitcoin is still in the early adoption phase of innovation. A recent survey viewed that 14% of Americans have put resources into Bitcoin, which can't be viewed as a mass adoption by any stretch. Therefore, it can be argued that demand is likely to rise for Bitcoin, which might pull costs higher. The above chart addresses the size of the Federal Reserve's resources. The Fed is the national bank for the United States, and the size of its resources is a wide check for estimating how much cash they are approving to be printed. Before 2007, the Fed's resources added up to almost $1 trillion. In 2021, this number has expanded to more than $8 trillion. Therefore, it's nothing unexpected that the cost of Bitcoin has been moving higher, as more cash is being printed by developed economies. What happens to BTC prices during monetary deflation? Then again, there are times when cash is destroyed or credit breakdowns, which establishes a deflationary environment. Generally, when the powers of deflation take over, we ordinarily see the cost of Bitcoin collapse also. The above diagram shows the cost of Bitcoin during the COVID-19 pandemic. Whenever individuals are constrained into their homes, they spend less in general, yet businesses have stock and expenses to pay. Therefore, during the pandemic, businesses have terminated laborers and incomes have imploded. The cost of Bitcoin imploded during this time too. Certain individuals might require the worth of Bitcoin changed over to their local fiat currency. For other people, the value breakdown might have been normal, as the pandemic started hauling costs lower seemingly forever. Conclusion: a large portion of the world's national banks target modest levels of inflation, at around 2% to 3% each year. More elevated levels of inflation can be dangerous for an economy, as it makes costs of goods rise excessively fast. By a similar token, deflation can likewise be awful news for an economy, as individuals hoard cash instead of spending or contributing, with the assumption that costs will soon be even lower. The significant point to remember is that the cost of Bitcoin follows cash creation. If the inventory of cash is expanding significantly, then the cost of Bitcoin probably will rise. If the stock of money is diminishing, the cost of Bitcoin probably will fall. These patterns don't compare straightforwardly, however, and are to be taken in general terms, because the demand for Bitcoin likewise affects costs. Outro. So this was my overview on inflation and deflation and their effect on Bitcoin prices. What do you guys think? Do let me know in the comment section, and I will see you guys in my next videos. Bye!